This week on RSBANDB Update, recent changes to Legendary and Masterwork weapons arrive. We run through the changes to equipment specials and passives, also upcoming drop table changes again for RuneScape's biggest bosses, Zuck waves, and flash events. This is RSBANDB Update, episode 1039, recorded Thursday, May 29th, 2025. A healthy balance. Hello everybody and welcome back to RSBANDB Update. This week it is combat week through and through. We got changes to the legendary weapons, Masterwork, and coming in the last few hours before the show closed, the continuation of that game health update that is dreaded in the eyes of many. And to talk about that this week, Bears, welcome back to the show. Been a while.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Been busy with real life stuff, but I'm excited to be back.
Right on. Bears, of course, has been with us many times, anchored our Zamorak coverage, and has just been able to provide so many great combat insights over the years. But also, Thaxi is here for whom he is known for maths and numbers, and I don't think we're going to be doing a full Emerald Bolts deep dive this week, but we're going to go into a few things along the way, right?
I spent a lot of time today looking at drop tables. We're going to do everything we can to summarize and give context to changes and updates. We will not be doing math live on air this afternoon if we can avoid it.
Yeah, we've moved past that. Well,
we'll see.
In any case, big huge thank you goes out to the experienced tier Patreon members for whom without update would not be possible. That's Amos Reed, Bladecom, Dominic R., Harry, Jason S., Jesse W., Kesky, Lemon Lodge, Ricky A., Runestar, Psy Oasis, Snail Mage, The Naked Captain, and Tim. Thank you so much, everybody. You'll hear more about our Patreon offerings a little bit later in the podcast, but in the meantime, if you want to follow along, show notes can be found over at update.show. The Friends chat can be found in-game at BitsBytes, and we also, of course, have the community Discord over at update.show/Discord. But legendary weapons. These are the tier 95s that needed some love, of course. So let's just start off with the Zuck sword, the Exakil. How are we feeling about this, Bears? You're the melee person of the group. I needed you here for this week, amongst other things.
Yeah, that was a tough break for the EZK. I was saying before the show that it was actually better last week than it was this week.
Yeah. And to caveat that, they know, and they are working on a massive update to the numbers that you see in Igneous Showdown right now.
Yeah. The idea isn't the worst. I don't hate it. But I just, like you said, the numbers aren't right.
So if we go through that, effectively, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, the idea of this updated special is to mark a target, in effect, to just make them take more melee damage overall, right? That's like the general gist of it.
Yep.
Okay. And where does that come in, and why did it? Well, let's say why did what came out this week not hit the mark? Is it just numbers, or is it feeling?
So with the numbers not being there, and the idea needed to be good. The idea, like I said, it kind of makes sense, but with how fights are now, there are not many bosses where you are able to use that weapon spec multiple times to make it worthwhile. Like, the fights are just too short.
Because when I read it, it almost sounded like something you'd give a support if you had a support class.
Yes, I agree.
Which isn't what a big sword from Zuck stands out to be, in my view.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing that came out of this week's update, in my opinion, was turning Quake into a debuff of 4 instead of 2.
Okay.
That's just how low the numbers were for the damage. So I was looking forward to that, and that was about it. And then they quickly said that they realized the numbers aren't right, and they're working on fixing it. So I have high hopes for it. One of the ways I like to be able to gauge the feeling of the community is by looking at the prices of these big ticket items. And I don't know if you guys tracked it at all.
I did not.
But so before anything got announced, it was about $1 bill, right? Then when it got announced, it went all the way up to 1.5. So people had high hopes. Day of release, it dropped all the way down to 900 mil. So now part of that is people are getting it out of the EOF and selling it.
Yeah,
I get that. But you could tell the community didn't necessarily think it was going to be that good by just how much it dropped in price day of it going live. And then since they've thrown out general numbers for the next update for it,
which I think they said it was around
800
to 900% damage multiplier from
on the secondary cast.
Secondary cast, yeah.
So again, you still need to have to use it at a fight that's going to take more than a minute or two, which there are still a couple, but not too many. But yeah, it's gone up to $2 bill now in price. So the community has high hopes for it again. So we'll see when that comes out.
Yeah.
But this was kind of a big swing and a miss.
Right. And, part of me wonders if maybe that's because when you look at what Melee is as a PVM combat style, you need such an investment in it. It almost feels as though this is something that is for the tinkerers of the bunch, like you in particular, because you could tell me what to buy spec-wise and weapon-wise for Melee, but yet I would have no idea how to go out and actually use this at a boss where I'd feel comfortable, staying within the 1 to 2 tile range that's needed.
Yeah.
So
and that's just
that's the nature of the beast in it, isn't it?
Yeah, you're always going to have to stay within that 1 to 2 tile range, and that just changes the whole fight for everyone. So yeah, I just don't know how to address that easily.
Yeah. But I guess
I'll give it some credit.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I like the idea. I mean, think about what they did with Overpower, right? Or with any of the things with the capes from Zook, where they decreased the cost and added a secondary effect. And I think they tried to kind of do that with some of the other melee ultimates that aren't used as much. Because there's a bunch of them that just aren't touched, right? Things like Pulverize, and I like the idea of decreasing the cost and maybe adding secondary effects to things. But in this way, it's a single target type of a focus.
Yeah. And
it seems like the execution maybe just needs some tweaking.
Yeah, and there's a fun thing that was hotfixed this week. If you use Pulverize, it was debuffing your damage by 25%, so it was an extra level of hard mode in certain cases.
Oopsies.
But that was fixed in good time. But don't read too much into what's on the tin of the EZK right now, and they will put out finalized numbers for what people can expect. I know Mod Pigeon talked a bit about that on the combat data stream of some things that they were thinking, but when it comes down to it, those are not final. Those will be presented at a later date. Okay, a Fractured Staff. This was obviously an iconic weapon, and they kept the special, of course, the same on this one, and they just added the passive to it of grants 15 to 30% crit strike damage, which of course leans into Magic's niche of the crit builds and whatnot, which I think is good, because this one was probably the best of the legendaries, right? That was there.
That got changed. Yes.
Yeah, the ones that got
especially
changed.
in ECK. I mean, you can make a debate if it's better than the Last Guardian. I think either or. It just kind of depends on who's using them too.
Yes, of course. Yeah. We were talking about the declining percentage of ranged human beings in the pre-show as we were going through some of the data stuff, and how that all relies on the bow. So
in the past, I would have thought about style identity wise, Magic is the you focus on big hits and crits. In Like range focuses on hitting things fast, which matches with the bulk where you're like building up those
And proc
stacks for the extra hits. And melee to me focused on kind of bleeds into a lot of weapon switching. Just it is what it is. Big toolbox. And I'm not sure how the EZK fits into that. Again, not to go back, but the Fasoa changes and the changes to the armors you're going to talk about really seem to like feed into that magic identity as a crit-focused combat style, which I think is a cool way to
I like.
separate the combat styles from each other. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Magic isn't just range reskin to like, oh, look, all like wild magic is just snapshot. It's like there is actually an identity to the style at endgame.
Yeah, if you want to go for that crit build, it's very clear now where you go and what you lean into and what you want to want. So they say the additional crit damage boost would boost your critical damage from 150% to between 165 and 180. So that's quite substantial when you think about it on that regard in terms of just how much extra numbers you're getting at the end of the day. With that, and still comes from a very iconic boss as well. Then we get to Tectonic and Elite Tectonic armor that have a set bonus. Tectonic is 1% crit chance per piece, and Elite Tectonic is 2% per piece. They say that they're not changing the Tuska and Sliske bonuses that will still grant the full 6% critical strike chance. Instead, the idea behind this is that it creates a clear progression path that if you want pure crit, Tuska set will remain a strong option, but if you prefer flat damage, Tectonic will deliver.
Yep. And then the Elite is the best of both worlds. You're
exactly.
For all the good. Yep.
And, I think you can... I think you can see the way people went with this week is that they showed it off in the data live stream that as of this Tuesday, the number of Magic users increased because of these changes that came out. And whether or not that's a temporary bump, I don't know, but fun nonetheless.
Yeah, I did a little bit of playing with it. I had Sliske with the Tuskas in it.
Yeah.
And then I got all my Elite Tectonic perked again. I did not notice a difference between like crit rate. So I think that's good. Like it makes sense that a tier 90, Elite Tectonic tier 92, 95, whatever it is better than the tier 80.
92.
Like, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
So like that's good. I didn't really notice anything with the staff. I am very, very glad that it is not a charging thing, like how the wand and orb are, because that would make it so complicated to play with that style. So
yeah,
but I think overall good changes for.
So my question then,
I like that they kept it simple.
Yeah.
I like the flat passives.
If you compare the Sliske setup with its 6%, and then the Elite Tectonic with its 6%, and then the extra 91 magic bonus there. Is that 91 going to be worth the half a bill for the set plus the upkeep? If we're just looking at raw prices?
You'll do 4 to 5% more damage. If you got money, you pay for more damage.
Yeah.
Okay. So
at that point, like, the people that are min-maxing like that, yes, it's worth it.
You will definitely want that if you're a min-maxer, right?
Yeah.
It is
everyday
likely worth
PDM or Slayer, it's probably not worth it for slaying. But, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You get money easy enough in this game that I would say it's probably worth it. Yeah, for now.
With the upkeep is the elephant in the room, right? Like,
yeah,
the problem with Elite Tectonic versus like the Sliske is the upkeep is significant. I mean, if you think about the amount of damage you get per cost, this is going to be you just upgrade order. If you're only doing endgame bossing where the upkeep cost is not significant, it would be more worthwhile to upgrade to Elite Tectonic before you upgrade to like a tier 99 prayer.
Right.
Like, you're going to get more damage bonus for your money. by doing that.
Yeah,
than
that makes
upgrading
sense.
from Turmoil. Or not Turmoil, sorry, Torment.
That's okay. I can never keep them straight either.
It's not good. I know Anguish is ranged. But yeah, so I think it's a valuable upgrade, and it is. I mean, and honestly, like you think
it's a
about
progression path.
It's a progression, but there's also like Virago is. It's like we're being pushed towards Virago, and I can't be terribly mad at this because I do like the boss. But like you do 4 Virago kills, you can make pants. You can make tier 90, Tectonic pants, and they do degrade to dust. But it's like it doesn't take terribly many Virago kills to make a full set of Tectonic.
Right. Do you think we'll ever go on the GIM in our group?
I would like to, because we can't make alchemic Hydrixes without rumbling components.
Oh,
and
right.
The options for that are like we get really lucky with scavenging, maybe, or we do 4 Virago kills, or we do several hundred Calphite King kills.
I know which one I'm doing, given the fact you mentioned Calphite King.
What Calphite King?
Right?
Oh my god, that boss is jank as heck. I kind of hate Calphite King. It's like he's 250,000 health, but like
no, seriously. Kind of I mean, if we're talking about if there is ever the menu to rework bosses out there, I know people want a Virago rework. Maybe Calphite King just needs a complete redesign for current year.
Yes.
Calphite King feels the worst of all the bosses. Rise of the Six is a close second. Again, those 2 bosses where they tried to use EOC mechanics in the boss and they didn't give them enough health because they didn't realize how damage was going to be in EOC. The design, didn't work.
Anyways.
But again, we have so much to talk to. This is so off the rails.
Yeah, it is. Anything else on Magic, Bears, or Thaxi?
No, I'm okay.
More passives like this. Yep, strong work. Class identity and simple passives. Keep it up. Speaking of simple passives,
the Masterwork weapons that came out with 110 smithing, fletching, and runecrafting. The sword, bow, and staff that kind of they were kind of. I was told by our listeners that these are what you use if you're somebody who is just doing casual, high level combat.
These are the weapons for cluers, for skillers, for
slayers.
This is the I mean, to some degree, these do require boss drops to earn. So there is for Iron Man, but it is they are the skillers' weapons. They are there for casual play, for Slayer, for things that you don't want to have huge upkeep costs.
Put it in perspective, I've never equipped any of these weapons.
Oh, I've never made any of them either.
I didn't even know until this week that they were augmentable. I thought they were not augmentable this whole time. So up until this week, I'd done 0 research onto them. So
I have and have made the bow and sword because I was poor and I got in early enough with the requirements for them that I kind of sniped them before their GE prices went up for the boss drop parts of things. So I have the bow and the sword and am pleased with that because I use them almost never because Necromancy Gabur. But I think this passive is just really solid. For context, of all abilities fired out of, assuming all abilities are being fired out of a tier 100 weapon, right? Like, that's where we're at. These will heal you almost exactly the same, if not slightly more than Vampirism Aura, just passively at all times. So if you run Vampirism with it, you have 2 Vampirisms. That is roughly 20% of the healing you're going to get from Soul Split, maybe a little bit more if you're hitting like large numbers and actually using ultimates in rotation and things. Same thing with like a Vampirism Scrim. So like if you use the sword, you fire off a hurricane, an average hurricane from the sword with Vamp Scrim, Vamp Aura, and Soul Split on will heal you for almost 1,000. Like,
which is half a shark in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, one hurricane
and keep in
on
mind
one target. If you're hitting
that
multiple targets,
even though it says attacks heal you for 2% of damage dealt, you feel like that's not much. But when you get rolling with a good rotation in these styles, you are going to be in a comfy space. Then, like you said, throw on the Vampire Zamora, Soul Split. You are going to have probably the best passive healing that the game can provide. And I don't even know, if you're doing Slayer, if you need any food at that point in time.
Somewhat ironically, no matter what you do, it won't outpace the Necromancy Ghost. But it's the next best thing for other combat styles. And again, without sacrificing things like your pocket slot or, aura necessarily. It's just you get vampirism running at all times. And that, I think, is enough context that I think most of us have used vampirism at some point. So, yeah, I like it. The change is good. Passive vamp aura at all times is awesome.
The thing I want to say on these is that I wonder if this expands the amount of people who are going to make them. If there's, people out there who say that, I feel like I'm powerful enough and I don't necessarily need this staff or this sword or this bow. Does this make somebody who's on the edge go out there and make them, I guess? And, the part of the reason I asked that question is because that's me. They're sitting on my main completely unlocked, but I've never made them, and I'm still on the fence if I would do such a thing. But at the same time,
I think after
I
this,
question
it's worth
if I
it.
need them. Okay. Because
I think it's just I want to go do Slayer. Let me find a more AFK method. Cool.
right.
I can go walk the dog while I go click an aggro pot for 5 minutes and come back in 5 minutes. I'm completely healed still.
Does this highlight an issue with necromancy with the ghost doing too much? Is that still overtuned?
We've highlighted that. That's forever. It's always been a problem. It's you look at those graphs of necromancy being the worst, is because necromancy feels comfortable. It's because literally the ghost is just too powerful. Like, the combat style is also easy to understand and makes sense and actually uses our combat system well. But that's, again, off the rails. Yeah.
Okay. And they did showcase a portion of the design on this. They said that they looked at empowered versions of existing special attacks on things like the Dark Bow or Armadyl Battlestaff, weakened versions of the legendary special attacks, and unique special attacks that were designed as introductory tools to help players learn core mechanics, or passives that enhanced abilities like Greater Chain, Ricochet, or Barge. And out of everything that was listed here, I think they went the right way. The only other one that's interesting to me is the first one of the enhanced version of existing special attacks like the Dark Bow and whatnot. That would be the only other one that would be interesting to me.
Yeah, a lot of them would have been. I mean, it's so hit or miss, right? You think about the ability altering gloves and boots as like the gloves of passage, garbage. Nightmare gauntlets, really good. Like, it's just they. Yeah. Ability altering seems like it's very hit or miss for something to give all three styles, and this is an easy way to just, again, we like flat passives, so
yeah,
I'm a fan.
And this would be a good thing for me to do, to start dabbling in Magic on the main, because I don't have anything above a tier 90 right now on my main in terms of the weapons. I could go out and I could, of course, buy for relatively cheap the tier 95 Sanctum ones, or I could just go make the Masterwork staff as an option. Maybe that's the one I'll make. Maybe that'll be a side project at some point soon.
It's kind of interesting because the Masterwork staff right now, just because I was curious, looked it up, is about 300 mil versus the Roar of Awakening is 111, and the Ode to Deceit is, what is this, 108. So it is more expensive than the tier 95s, which it's a tier 100, I guess. But it doesn't have the passives that they do. So, no, but that one.
So maybe it's still not for me. And see, this is the thing. if you are out there listening to this show and this new passive speaks to you and you haven't made them before, let us know, because I'd like to know what kind of player that is. And I'm sure
it's definitely a really good Slayer option, right?
Yeah.
No matter what, it's like if you have one, really going to be good for just low key, even a lot of early bossing. Like you could probably self-sustain through a lot of like low tier bossing with these weapons.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So plus they're tier 100, which
I mean, yeah, of course.
Does not hurt.
Okie dokie. I'm going to thank some Patreon supporters, then we'll move into the game health update. So this week, I would like to thank Alvaro L, Amos Reed, Arvids L, Bladecom, Chubura, Dominic R, Duramax, Gila Fleur, Harry, Jade Gizmo, Jason S, Jesse W, Kesky, Lemon Lodge, Luminos, Mongrath, Pernasius, Ricky A, Robbie D, Runestar, Samuel FL, Scott DS, Shirt Pants, Sly Oasis, Snail Mage, The Naked Captain, The Dabbing Goat, Tim, Ukulele Steve, Woody, Zant, and Zazakon. Big, huge thank you, everybody. If you're wondering what this is about, head on over to patreon.com/RSBANDB. There we have 3 tiers of support available, starting for as little as $1 a month. You get access to 80 plus now monthly bits or bonus episodes, as we call them. This month, we're going to be doing one this coming June, early June. We're going to be doing one on runes and the rune economy. That was an interesting choice based on the way the poll went, because that one was not winning at first, and it came out ahead. But with that, we'll just be talking about the value of runes and how they fluctuated over the years. And you sign up for as little as $1 a month, and you get that episode and all the other ones. You get the ability to vote on the monthly bit topics when we put them up, and you also get the option to attend the round table, which is your option to come talk with us, the people who make Update, once a month. All that and more for $1 a month. We also do have the VIP tier, where for $3 a month you'll receive a special VIP rank on Discord. It includes a chat channel, a mention on the podcast at the start of the month, and high-quality stereo versions of the show, in addition to everything else. And we also do have the Insider tier, where for $5 a month you get a shout-out each and every week on the podcast, and you also get access to the clips that we use to make the clip show at the end of the year. And with that, of course, we thank you so much for everything, everybody. You make this show possible. You allow us to do all the fun things here and there. So thanks so much, everybody. Patreon.com/RSBNB.
Thanks, y'all.
Okay, game health updates, otherwise known as, in this case, the combat common drop table changes, but
it's a balance pass.
It's a balance pass. And this is something that they put into a frame that it in fact was such a long post that it required 2 posts. In the first part, they addressed what are game health updates and provided an update on some of the cash flows in terms of where the GP comes into the game. And I just wanted to go through this and talk a little bit about what they define game health updates as. And in general, they say this comes down to game progression, which is things like skilling, quests, unlocks, and game difficulty, and game modes such as Iron Man. The game's economy with rebalances can also fall under this umbrella too, which can encompass buffs, nerfs, or neutral changes. Game systems and how you interact with the game, such as a new tutorial system, the clan system, the grouping system, or user interfaces. Quality of life updates in their various form, and technical updates such as code, performance, and maintenance all count as game health updates. So in short, they target a wide variety of things to ensure the game continues to provide a strong RuneScape experience while mitigating dangers that could affect the journey and experience of all players. And that's the general idea of game health. And they say if you're familiar with old school's Project Rebalance or the Summer Sweep Up, those are kind of similar to what they're doing here. And I think the thing that I took away from the first part of this post, and you guys can tell me if you agree or not, is just the amount of transparency here in terms of how they're positioning this update as to why it's needed, and where some of the GP that we're dealing with is actually coming into the game in the month of May here on average that we saw.
Yeah, the information they gave was very eye-opening. And we'll talk about a little bit later some of my favorite stats that they gave. But it really, like, if I would have sat there and they just said, yeah, this gets nerfed, this gets buffed, I'd be like, okay, like, I don't know if I like this or not. But when they give, like, the hard details of, hey, this is happening too much, we need to nerf it. Like, that was helpful. And it really, like, opened my eyes. But, like, yeah, that makes sense. That checks out.
Yeah.
This first post, they really did just give us a 10-page essay on here's like why we balance the game. And I think that's something that is kind of a unique RuneScape player experience, because they do generally do a pretty good job of when they put stuff into the game, it feels close to right. You know, shout out to Timbo and the folks who've been involved in the balance team for forever for all the work that they've done for that, because like we don't have like I actively play a few other MMOs and like used to play League, and like those games get balance patches anywhere from every 2 weeks to like every like month and a half, 2 months. Like, and so it's the fact that RuneScape, when we need a balance update, it's a big deal, and it's something that they have to literally write a full blog post to say, hey, we know you don't like balance changes, but here's why they matter. I think it speaks to the game being generally well kept.
It's an important
that they should
thing
do this more often.
To also just highlight how game dev works, and the fact that, you know, we might see something as being static, it can't be static.
Right. We have to be free for changes. With that said, I think, like you were saying, the specific, I really like the data that they gave us on this first post about where GP was coming into the game, right? And you look at, I want to just make a quick note that the first one of these charts on number 2, gold coming into the game, is from general stores. The 99% of that is people selling spirit shards, because that was still how
that was January 2023.
So if we ignore that 43 million or 43 billion coins coming into the game a day from that, because it was value that was previously in the game and just converted into storage, basically.
But now that same slot
bill
is down to 3.2 bill only.
Right. So effectively, we have shifted from where we previously, again, if you ignore that, there was about 160 bill coming into the game a day, and currently we're up to about 250 bill. So you can blame any number of things for that in terms of power creep or bossing, people actually starting to do more bossing and doing these things that give high value loot and alcohols, and the things that they're going to try to remove as part of the current game health update is that we have all this extra loot coming into the game, and the vast majority of that loot, more than 50%, well more than 50%, is coming from alchable items and raw coins dropped to the floor.
Yeah, because our top 3 are invention machines at 100 and...
They're all alchemy.
11 billion.
They're all alchemy.
Then we have regular high alch at 57 bill, and then the spring cleaner at 39 billion per day. And then the next, of course, is monster drops, drop to floor, and the advanced coin magnet in the top 5.
If you count raw coins and alchables and you lump them together, you get significantly more than 80% of the money coming into the game. About 6 out of every 7 gold is coming in the forms of alchables or raw gold. Which, again, you can say that's probably how it should come into the game. And that is, frankly, fair. But is it, if you're going to try to limit how much gold is coming into the game, that's the thing you need to look at. And clearly there has been a growth of 40% or more in terms of how much gold is coming into the game in just the last 2 years. And so we need to do some things to curb that growth.
Right. And then with that, you look at your top 5 in terms of where that goes. Other line items include general stores, as we talked about, the money tree, and normal pickpocketing. They also have an other category worth about 2.5% or 6.5 bill. But the thing I do want to say is that when you look at Treasure Hunter in particular, that encompasses about 3.46%. And, a lot of the people when we were saying this last time, well, what about Treasure Hunter? Hello, it's not here in the top 5.
It's not even vaguely close.
So that's the transparency that's needed so that you can talk about the next part of it, which comes down to balancing the bosses that drop all the salvage and all the other stuff that gets converted to GP. And I don't think that I need to necessarily mention anything else on this first post. I think it's got lots of good information on it that everybody should read if you want to know where this comes from. But the point is that anything that is alked or anything that is dropped by an NPC makes up your top 5 with a vast portion of the amount of GP that's coming in. And, you know, I think the thing that stands out to me whenever we talk about this sort of thing is that, to me, it's clear that a boss drop leads to more GP, which could lead to more inflation, which leads to a bad time for the rest of us. But that's not something that everybody is thinking about as they spend their day walking through the world of RuneScape, right? So, but
macroeconomics, woo.
That's exactly it. And, you know, Old School had a fun macroeconomic update too. We'll probably be talking about that one on the Old School show this weekend. So just a fun note on that one. Okay, how do we want to go about this when it comes to the common loot and the balance in general?
Before we dive in, because the thing that we're really discussing here is kind of the common loot value of bosses, I really want to kind of pick your guys' brain in terms of where do we think, just as a discussion, common loot should land in relation to boss difficulty? Do we feel like they need should common loot be balanced with the rare loot in mind? Is my question. So something like Raziel, where his common loot isn't worth a whole lot, but his rares are worth a ton, or the opposite of that, the QBD, where her common loot is worth all of her loot value and her rares are worth literally less than her common drops. Are either of those extremes, is that fine, or would we like it to be something that's based off boss difficulty? Because it seems like most bosses in the game do have some common loot based, they're scaling based off their difficulty. But does it need to be that way? Are we upset if it's not?
I don't think one extreme or the other is better. I think there needs to be a balance, right? So I mean, before these updates went through, I felt like Raksha is still probably going to be one of the worst cases of the common loot's not that great. So it feels like you need a rare drop or you get nothing.
I think
Rydel's going to be that same way now.
For sure.
And I think it's okay that some bosses are that way, and it's okay that some bosses aren't that way. It just different people do want different things, right? You might want to play that lottery of, oh, I need a Greater Rico, and I'm going to do Raksha until I get it. Or there might be someone who wants to go to Zami and just do consistent 500% kills and get 5 mil every kill. And then on the off chance, they also do get a rare drop, right?
Well, you think something like Raziel or Nex, you're also going to be getting a drop every 20 to 50 kills, right? Depending.
Right.
And the frequency you get those drops makes the common loot being comparatively worse compared to other things maybe feel fine. How common you get rares maybe is an impact on it too.
The issue that comes into hand is that are the bosses being designed primarily as a way to make money, or they're being primarily designed as a way to put a certain item into game? Because, it seems like every quarter or thereabouts, the discussion about bad luck mitigation comes up and how you would do such a thing if you guaranteed that you get, say, a Fractured Staff of Armadyl piece after what? I don't know, every 100, 200 kills? I don't know what would be what would be a good
450,
number. 450,
but
450.
450.
Do you guarantee that? And then, at the other hand, because you'll get it at that range, do you balance the drop table around that, or does it just become more about the commons along the way, like you were saying with Zamorak bears? And I think it's a question for the combat team to fundamentally answer, because I know how it felt to do the Raziel log. And I did that in about 1,300 kills, which I know I could have gone well into 1,900 or 2,200 based on how some of the people I talked to with that. And I can say that if the logs as they are for Raziel in this post were what I was dealing with, I don't know how I'd feel about that, because I didn't get rich off that boss.
Well, and I'll run through a bunch of examples. He's absolutely the worst example of effort input per common loot. He is the worst. There is kind of no real comparison there. But I think you make a really good point, too, that I wanted, before we move away, I really wanted to echo is, like, I like the idea of if the purpose of the boss in the game is to drop the rare thing, is to introduce the rare thing into the game. And obviously it's also, like, a gameplay experience and things, but in terms of, like, what people do it for, a lot of the time it is, I think, to introduce rare item to the game.
And I think we have a case study for that. I think the case study for that is the Sanctum, with how common the normal wand and ore bar on normal mode, and then the shard isn't too terribly rare on hard mode either.
I think that's a really good example. I mean, even to some degree like Raziel, right, where his job is to introduce tier 95 equipment to the game, that's what he does. His average loot is over 3 mil. His common loot is 230k on average right now. Like, he drops nothing. His common lapis are
like
awful.
I said, I didn't get rich doing that.
Adjusted today, he got one of the lightest set of nerfs. So that's, I mean, it's completely worth mentioning there. That, like, some bosses were not designed to bring things into the game, like Arch-Glacor. You could argue that it's designed to bring the cold cuts and the things into the game, but it's also designed to be a teaching boss.
That was maybe too lucrative up until now.
Up until now. So let's put some numbers and give some context, right? So bosses in order of difficulty. Stop me if you disagree with my order here. Krill, God Wars 2, QBD and the Matriarchs, Osseous, Nex, and Rax.
Yeah, that's fair.
The Krill's average common drop loot is only 12k. Another example where his commons aren't great, but there's obviously his rares are important. The Furies and Hellware are 50k. Vindy and Greg are about 100k because of single standout items in the drop tables. QBD and the Matriarchs are both about 180k a kill, with limited rares. In the case of some of the Matriarchs, more rares, but in terms of just commons, about 180k. Osseous is about 200k. Raziel would be next. So he's fitting in before Nex and Rax, which difficulty-wise maybe feels about right. But again, his rares are super rare. Nex is about 350k, Rax 550k. Right, in terms of difficulty, in terms of number of mechanics, amount of health you have to burn through, time it takes to get a kill, how many kills you can get a day, like, genuinely most of those seem kind of in line with the content. That brings us to the bosses that are getting changed. Currently, before the changes on the live patch, normal mode Kerapac is giving 750k a kill, which again, Rax is our highest at 550. Should normal mode Kerapac give double the loot of Nex? Maybe
I don't
not.
think so.
Maybe not.
Like, if I'm looking at it purely from a number angle, no.
He has limited mechanics and 550,000 health, and his execute phase has some challenge to it, and he is a DPS check to do lightning and those kind of things, where his kills get much longer. But it's also a matter of, like, the average person kills him in 2 to 3 minutes versus, Next similar time frame, but half the gold. So Kerapac definitely overdoing himself. He's the first on the list of things that got changed. And when you look at what his average drop value is post these updates, his average drop value is dropping to about 300k a kill.
So when you sum that up, that's still not bad.
Just under Nex,
good for how easy
better than Osseous. He'll still be fine. Hard mode Kerapac, currently 1.6 mil in commons per kill. Again, that is 3 Rax kills or 5 Nex kills in commons. Again, Next, obviously, average drop value very much towards her rares, but like Kerapac's common value 1.6 mil a kill is kind of aggressive. a little aggressive. And that's going to get toned down to about 550. So Kerapac will give about the same amount of loot as a Rax kill, not quite as much as like 2 next kills after the changes. Pretty reasonable. Hard mode Kerapac's changes, just to kind of run through them very briefly. His coin and alchemy drops are dropping by 50 to 66%. Most of the other things in his drop table are 20 to 40% down. As somewhat of a compensation, they're adding a chance to drop 2 manuscript pages instead of just 1. So assuming that the chance is equal between the two, 50% more manuscripts
which is
are
needed
dropped.
when you look at the price of those presently, how they've shot up.
Yes,
Yep.
absolutely. And again, so that seems to be that, again, will add in about, some money to his common drop table to like buoy that back up 300, 350k, about where Nex is. So fine, reasonable. Similar health bar size, has some mechanics, requires you to kind of pay attention, sure. Common in normal mode, all rares are being buffed by 1% drop value of their current drop rate. And in hard mode, the drop chance for rares is going up 6 to 13% depending on the item. But generally speaking, staff a little easier to get. Cool.
Which is weird when
I
you
guess
think about
that-
it, because people were always saying, make the key drops of these legendary things more common.
Sure.
And to do that, you have to kind of lower the common drops.
Yeah. So, like, to me, that feels like a good trade-off. As someone who bosses a lot, like, it's
Mhm.
much more exciting to make 100 mil or
Yeah.
500 mil off of 1 drop than it is to make 500 mil off of 500 drops, right? Like, so, like, getting that dopamine, to me, feels more exciting. So, like, I'd rather have less common loot and more rare loot.
He got one of the
just-
heaviest nerfs. His total loot, including rares, is going down by a marginal amount. It is likely that over a long period of time, the amount of money you make from the boss, counting on hard mode at least, is not going to change significantly. In normal mode,
Yeah.
it's going to drop by like half. But in hard mode, where you have chance at the staff piece, it's going to be pretty dark.
Well, yeah, because people were primarily farming that for the cannonballs, for the dragonkin bones and the hides and all
when
that.
we talked about these, we were worried about where cannonballs would come from. That was one of the biggest things we were looking at. They added them to another drop table. So in terms of his drops, I'm actually pretty happy with where they've landed on Kerapac.
All
Yeah,
right.
I'm so excited. I was hoping it'd come out soon, and I would just be able to go and grind out a FSOA and the Group Iron Man. Like, I'm ready.
The next example boss on the list is the Arch-Glacor. I think this is unquestionably the biggest nerf bat they chose to swing at something, and it was almost certainly the biggest outlier that needed a nerf. So I can't be terribly mad, but hot dang.
No, and
some of this is pretty aggressive.
Right, because it was more economical to just sit there and camp the 0 or 1 mechanic, and that's where the charms for summoning came from, as an example.
Yeah. So the way they're changing Arch-Glacor is that on 0 and 1 mechanic, you will get a singular loot pile from a separate drop table. We don't know what that drop table is going to look like, assuming it is similar to the current drop table. And they also said it's only going to drop like 1 charm. 1 to 3 charms, or maybe something like that. But it is, the number of charms you're getting is going down by around 90%, 90-95%. And it's, the amount of loot you're getting is, you weren't getting a lot of loot to begin with. Now you will genuinely get like God Wars 1 tier loot, which makes sense, frankly. That's like a God Wars 1 tier boss. You just don't have the chance of rares. So Zero Mech is really never going to be worth killing anymore for anything other than combat experience.
I think we have to be okay with that.
And I think we have to be okay with that. In terms of like using the 0 to 4 mechs as a learning tool, I also want to say they included numbers for like the 1 to 4 mech categories. I would love to know what psychopath is out here doing more than 1 or 2 kills in a row at those at 1 to 4 mechs, because like imagine if you just, what mech would you only turn on one of? Like what mech do you want to get hit with every time? Like are you getting cannoned? Are you getting cannoned every 5 seconds? Like is that the plan?
A flurry attack, so it just hits with the range and magic, and you can usually out heal it with Soul Splitter Ghost. Probably just
100%
Ghost.
you can, yeah. I didn't even think about that. No, 100%.
So it's like, as of now, it's still a slightly better loot table for no more effort.
But the like ice beams and minions, arms, those are all going to be garbage to have on their own. Like that's a rough one. So I mean that's what we have to say about 0 and 1 mech. They're not going to be worth doing anymore. 5 mech, they're decreasing the average. So each pile of loot in 5 mech, instead of dropping 5 charms, will now drop 1 to 3. So they're decreasing the number of charms dropped on average by 60% at 5 mech. Glacier will no longer be a good place to go for charms. They're also decreasing the loot you get from 5 mechanic Glacier by 80% across the board.
Is this a call to put people into hard mode?
So, see, here's where we get into this is why the context is important, because when I first heard this and saw this, I got rather upset, because that's a fat nerf.
Yeah.
But, here's what you need to think about with it. How much health does the thing have in 5 mech? It's like 500, 600k? This is a genuine question I should know the answer to, and don't, because I just apply damage. If you decrease the amount of gold it drops by 80%, you're still getting like 200k a kill, which puts it in the same bucket as a Rex Matriarch, or like, well, Raska, but he really doesn't count. But like, thinking about it that way, I think it is still not enough loot for 5 mechanic Glacier. It's not hard. It doesn't deserve to be as much as Nex, but
I wonder if this is something we're going to kind of have to dive into when it arrives to see how it feels.
Yeah, I mean, the loot you get is going to be Nex without the chance of, or less loot than Nex without the chance of uniques, right? Like that's kind of where it's going to be. Like 5 mech is just not really going to be worth doing unless you are an Iron Man who specifically needs something off of the drop table. Which is interesting, just from the standpoint that they are also changing that drop table pretty significantly. So that's, again, all just normal mode. The hard mode changes are more targeted and will be more in line with what we're seeing at the rest of the bosses.
With what we expect is the main,
right?
Of the main
in hard mode, they are decreasing
nests.
Most of the like typical drops like Dragon Stones and Crystal Keys and those kind of things by about 33%. They're decreasing the salvage and alchemical type drops by 66%, which again, we're going to see that coin toggle is the same number they did for Kerapac. It's going to be same for pretty much all these, about 66% less salvage. They're dropping like 80+% on Bane Stone Spirits and Nests. I kind of worry what that's going to do to Bane Stone Spirits. Nests, I feel like, will be fine. And in compensation for this, they have increased the drop rate for all rare items by about 50%, which I think Glacier needed.
Right, because let's be real, that's what you should be doing hard mode Glacier for if you're going for the cold cuts or what have you.
So
also worth noting, they're removing Spirit Seeds from the hard mode table. They did not mention it in the normal mode, and I hope it is still there for reasons we'll talk about later.
So this is what I was talking about when I said that when they gave like actual details that made me like agree with these nerfs was every day Arch-Glacor is responsible for 95% of the Baneite Stone Spirits entering the game.
Yeah.
That is like a mind-blowingly high number. And then Armadyl is the next highest at 3%. Same with Crushed Nest. 95% of Crushed Nest. Like, again, that is unreal.
I remember when they used to be like be a huge I feel like at one point they were 8K each, and that was like a bingo moment when you were woodcutting, which is maybe how it should be.
We don't know. Well, it's also because the use of brews has changed a little bit too, in terms of like combo weights and those kind of things now. But or liquid food, move towards liquid food in general. But I'm trusting because we don't know all the details in terms of like how many nests there are currently in the economy.
Right.
Like we don't know what this is going to shake out as. And we've seen with stuff like the example they did in Blog 1 where like the recovery in price of things tends to be pretty slow. Even if it's only been in like flooding the economy for a couple of years.
Yeah,
and
the thing is that everything here
fine.
is pushing the levers on the side of supply of each of these items. And the question is, if people aren't making the Sarah Brew potion that uses the nest, you can't have the glut of them in the economy.
Well, and the thing is, people are making them, right? Like they have a use. They're not 1 GP. So we'll see what happens with that. And again, I do worry with some specific seeds that are going to crop up repeatedly in these nerfs, where we end up economy-wise. And I think Iron Man in particular, which again, they said in the first blog post, like you have signed up for a higher tier of difficulty in gameplay. You had like, I think some of it is if you want to get specific items, you have to be willing to do specific challenging content is kind of the message there. So we're going to see how certain items come into the game, but I do have concerns, especially if because again, they didn't say anything about Spirit Seed as an example for normal mode Glacor. I am hoping they remain on that drop table because I would be down to do 5 mechanic Glacor as a dropper for Spirit Seeds compared to some of the other options that remain, which are going to be limited.
And, I feel like everybody knew that the Arch-Glacor had to be on this list, and this was going to be what was discussed here, so I don't feel like there was too many surprises. All right, so let's move on to Zamorak here, because I know, Bears, you spent a lot of time there. How does this make you feel?
I have. It feels fine. I still think the same way that it was way too overpowered with the comments. As much as I went there and enjoyed that overpowered loot, it was, once you got good enough at 500%, it was 5-6 minute kills and you'd walk out with anywhere from 5 to 10 mil before a rare drop. Like that was just too much money per hour.
The context they gave on this. Oh, go ahead. No, finish. Sorry.
So it goes back to what I was saying with Kerapac is they took away some of the comments, right? So that part gets nerfed, but they also increased the chance to receive a bow piece. So I think it will even out somewhat. And so I think it's fine. I think it was needed. Again, going back to the fun stats, what was it? 90% of uncut onyxes were entering from
95, yeah.
That is something I did not know that was that big of a culprit.
And then the next closest is AOD at 4%, and not many people do AOD, so it's really the only way to get uncut onyxes, it seems like, were Zamorak.
And I guess then the question that follows from that is that this doesn't really impact your desire to do the boss then, because at the end of the day, it's about getting those bow pieces.
Yeah. That's like I said, there's 2 ways you can view it. You can want to try to get the common loot and just sit there for 500 kills, get consistent X amount of money and make the money that way, or you can just fish for the rare drop. So it depends on the day where I'm at, but for Zami, I'm perfectly fine with going there still with these changes.
All right, how about you, Thaxi? What did you see in the rates that were here?
I think the comment on this was especially worth notice, which is that he's putting in almost 40 bill worth of value into the game a day, which is to say that just the alkables from Zamorak were like 17%, maybe a little more, of the total gold coming into the game a day. If you had 6 gold pieces, like you've picked 6 random gold pieces from the game that have come in the last couple of years, one of them will be from just this one boss. Like, that is kind of an insane proportion given how much content there is in the game. That is an insane amount of gold kind of
and
income.
I think the thing that they do here, in terms of subbing out like the Onyx, is they replace them with the Undercity relics, and I think we were talking about that too, Bears. That's a similar value, and then you have the choice either disassemble or high elk.
Yes.
Right.
So I was wrong earlier. I thought they changed it to replace the uncut onyx with a rare relic. It's uncommon,
No.
but it'll be 10 to 20 uncommon.
Yeah.
So like it will be a little bit less, but like you said, you can disassemble them instead of high elking them if you want to go for the components, which is a way to kind of put gold sync into the game.
Well, it goes back to, again, what they've done with the loot table here. On average, is they've removed almost everything by about 50%. It actually had, percentage-wise, one of the lighter set of nerfs to salvage for some reason, despite how really strong it has been. So with that kind of in mind, it is like maybe worth just the note that, like, one of the salvage things I think, and this is actually a typo, they say huge bladed salvage from 3 to 10 is going to 5 to 8, which is 0 difference. I think that's supposed to say 5 to 10 going to 3 to 8. But again, generally speaking, this is one of the lighter nerfs to salvage, being 50%, maybe slightly more. So he's still going to be putting, almost 10% of the total income to the game will be just Zamorak, assuming people are still killing him at the same rates.
When you factor in, you make the bow pieces more common, you're in a happy place.
Yeah. It'll be all right. The thing that they did make a note here, which I'm going to just, again, scroll away in people's heads for later, is that dwarfweed seeds is being decreased by about 60-70%. And he was 55% of the dwarfweed seeds coming into the game, with the second highest as Raziel, which
we have to have a conversation about that, and maybe do that in the Raziel
Spoilers.
section about where these seeds are going to.
I think when we get to the Raziel section, we're gonna there's a couple. At Raksha, we've got nerfs to seeds kind of across the board here for some specific seeds, which clearly were coming into the game too much, but I worry about their sources.
All right, Zuck.
So nice. From the minions, we're getting about 80% less bolt tips and 66% less salvage. Consistent numbers. From the boss, we changed some drops to be spirits, to be like log spirits, I think, but they didn't give us numbers on what those drops were. So,
I mean, I think that's
in
okay.
a row where they've left off the numbers to do with Zuck, and maybe they just weren't pretty. I don't know. The biggest change here in my brain is minions on Challenge Wave no longer give drops on repeat attempts. So you cannot just farm the Igneous Sekar on Wave 4 anymore for infinite everything. It was really nice. I did that for when I needed to grind out Anima.
Oh, okay.
I needed to grind out Anima to upgrade my ring, and I didn't want to bother with the whole thing. I did that. But it is, it's cheesy, let's be honest. That's definitely not intended.
It was not an intended thing, and it's been there since the beginning.
I did I did it on my second monitor, on my second account for, it was probably 3 months. But I did it so much that I got over, and this was before they changed the max hash, but I kept everything in my chest until it had over 2.1 bill.
Yeah.
And that's how easy it was You just set up, you occasionally hit overload, you occasionally hit the button, and
Yep.
you just... So it was definitely needed to be changed.
Yep. So heavy decrease in alcohols, and for anybody that doesn't know, bolt tips are alcohols. You turn them into bolts and enchant them, and suddenly they're worth significantly more than their GE value. Ta-da! So all the bolt tip stuff, the Hydrix bolt tips, the Onyx bolt tips that are being nerfed from those are just alcohol nerfs.
I also wanted to comment on the wood spirits and whatnot, because Group Iron Man side been seeing where those come and where they don't come from, and I still feel like we're running short on those. So I think anything that adds wood spirits is a good thing.
I think it's very interesting from an Iron Man perspective. I've used pretty much every drop of everything I've gotten except for Bay Knight, and the Bay Knight I've gotten so far will get me 99 smithing. Or 110 or whatever the heck it is. I've got 3,000 Bay Knight spirits from 2 or 3 Arch-Glacor streaks. Those are the only ones I feel like I get enough of. So take that as you will.
All right.
The fact that they're away.
And then comes a big one with Raksha, because I feel like Raksha always was part of the discussion as to whether or not the commons were not good enough for what you had there.
So this is back to the conversation I was having earlier about average common loot. The perception right now for Raksha is that his common loot does not live up to the level it needs to. The current average common loot value at Raksha is 600k. That is better than Rax. That is not quite worth 2 next kills. In terms of the difficulty of the boss, the amount of time it takes to kill it, I don't feel like that misses the mark terribly far.
I am not a Raksha connoisseur, so I can't necessarily comment on that.
Yeah, I'm not really either.
But the thing that I've always felt is that you go to that boss if you're looking for your Greekos, you're looking for your divert and whatnot. The boots are secondary, and everything else you really don't care about.
So let's run through the actual changes when they did to this. Raksha is losing 66% of his alchemy drops. They rebalanced his rare table to add value, so he's dropping slightly more of the more valuable rares and slightly less boots. They are in more boot spikes in particular. They're also removing we'll get to the seeds, but they're changing out a couple of his seed drops to add value as well. And when you look at the based on what they've given us, you can math out the new average common loot value. It's about 450k, give or take, depending on where seed prices land. It could be plus or minus 50k from that, but he's losing about 25% of his common loot value, and is going to be a little more profitable common loot per kill wise still than he's going to fall between Nex and Rax.
Which to me is not the kind of world I expected him to be in, but I guess that's okay.
I would expect him to be at or higher than Rax.
Yeah.
But yeah. What do you think, Bears? Because you kind of cut your teeth at Raksha, if I remember right.
Right. Going back to the debate of if you value it based off of how hard the boss is, Raksha is more difficult than Araxor by a significant margin, in my opinion. At least effort or actions per minute. At this point, a lot of Raksor kills are you just kind of hang out for the first 2 minutes and time gated lasers.
Yeah.
So Raksha feels worse again, and I just have a bone to pick with Raksha and my loot there, so it's just me being unlucky, and that's okay. That happens.
It is worth noting that they did keep the 2 changes they mentioned in the last blog, where they are switching out low-value seeds for higher-value seeds, which was one of the things we praised them for last time, and this is now our second dropper of spirit seeds to talk about. They're removing spirit seeds from this drop table and replacing them with Arbok seeds. Now that is super. That makes so much sense, right? That is probably where
That's
that
an
should be.
Anachronia potion.
It's an Anachronia seed. It's worth a lot of money. There aren't a lot of sources for them. The problem now is that the only thing that drops Spiritweed seeds, again, we don't know if they're removing them from the normal Arch-Glacor table. I kind of assume they are, but I have no idea. Is if they're removing them from that, the only thing that is still going to have Spiritweeds on its drop table is Hermod. And getting enough seeds from Hermod to sustain overloads feels like it's going to be challenging economically. And maybe that's the point, is like we buff up Hermod's drop table a little bit. His average loot is not great. It's a little bit lower than the God Wars 2 bosses, which again, feels fine difficulty-wise. But I don't know that it needs to be harder or higher in value. And the fact that those are, like, as an Ironman, if I really want Spiritweed seeds, I have to grind out. Like, if I want 100 seeds, I have to do like 120 Hermod.
Right, and you know, I saw the
fine,
main problem with the Spiritweeds as the Arch-Glacor. I never really considered Raksha to be a Spiritweed problem.
Yeah, and I understand switching out his seeds from a, like, we want his commons to be better angle, and we have a more appropriate seed we could put here. But I do worry that we maybe are losing too many sources of Spiritweed seeds. Because they are not just reduced from an overdropper, but they are straight up removed from 2 drop tables now. They're 2 of their 3 biggest drop tables are straight up gone. And maybe that's fine. We're going to see. So, I trust their numbers on it, but
it's a question
it's
a question I think that we can ask at the end of the day on that.
Yeah.
Now, we knew that the wilderness flash events were going to be in there again, and I think the big through line for this one is that everybody's been saying forever, buff the Dark Onyx core, and you know they are delivering on that.
Yeah.
That was in the first one. That's still here.
Yep. And the bigger buff, like in the first one, like it was going to be like 10% higher or something. It is a straight up like full, what is it, 50%? Yeah, full 50% increased chance of the Dark Core. Amazing. But criminals, they want criminals to be a skilling method, not something that's dropped from loot bags. So they are replacing them with drops of runes below the time rune, including some combination runes. So we're going to see what those rune drops look like, if it's all of one type, or if it's like a casket of random selection of here's some rune spam in your inventory. Otherwise, they are they're changing, and I kind of wonder why they didn't do this for more of this, but they changed all of the Necronium salvage to Orichalcum salvage, which, believe it or not, almost exactly a 66% value loss.
Right.
It's like, there's a theme.
And you know, we saw this on the first week of Flash events, just how much of that was coming in, and I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Yes, they were too good. Also, they significantly decreased the amount of coins, logs, and remains being dropped by the reward bags, along with smaller nerfs to some other things, but that's kind of the big hits is those. And again, we've talked about how logs should come from something else, and same with it feels weird to have logs and spirits on drop tables when they've completely removed herbs in place of seeds and completely removed ores and bars in place of stone spirits. So removing logs seems fair. These changes I actually feel are pretty well balanced and justified as somebody who doesn't do a lot of Flash events for any number of reasons.
Indeed. Okie
Yes.
dokie. And then Vorkath. I know we talked about the idea of
The
needing
winner.
like a Vorkath redesign at some point, but just increasing things like the chance of getting the Lord of Bones Codex, I think that's a good move.
We found out this week that Vorkath is one of the most deadly boss encounters in terms of player kills in the game. We found out through Group Ironman that he is one of, if not, very close to, he is in the top 5 for most challenging to kill in terms of the amount of damage you have to deal and take. Vorkath is oddly challenging. Or not oddly, but like unexpectedly, at least for me. And his rare chance, the chance of getting rare things from him, was garbage. Also one of the rarest pets in the game. Like, people just do not enjoy this content, partially because it is not rewarding. And we said that pretty much on release, right? That, like, Vorkath, something about this table is not good.
Yeah, and
it's
I mean,
not
we
doing
found
what it needs. The rewards were good, but it didn't work.
people found uses for Lord of Bones and whatnot.
Yes.
And I'll point to you, Bears, on that. But beyond that, it's still a boss that raises eyebrows.
Yeah. I mean, my team's planning on going there come Monday, and at least 2 of us are gonna grind out our 100 kills to get the Nexus upgraded. Hope we get one of the codexes and some spikes, or whenever this comes out. I'm sorry.
Yeah, fair enough. Got it. Specifically not Monday.
And, yeah. So I'm really looking forward to it. Now that, like, I've done 200 plus kills on my main, I understand the fight a decent amount now, and I relatively like it. But you're right. Like, why would I go to Vorkath and put in more effort and get less money than Zamy?
Other things, yeah.
Like, so I'm looking forward to seeing how much these help and make it worth doing, and I'm excited for it.
All right, in the last
the Vorkath, again, just to specifically mention the changes, they're increasing on normal. They're adding increasing the chance to get Lord of Bones by 17%, and increasing the chance to get spikes, which is the armor component, or the armor upgrade component, by 10%. They're also increasing the number of spikes dropped at once by 1 for every drop. For hard mode, Lord of Bones is going up by a full 40% drop chance. They're also increasing the chance to get a Vorkath scale, which instantly upgrades a piece of Dracolich armor with no need for ancient scales or any of the other components. It's just a straight upgrade item. They're increasing that by 40%.
And I think that addresses a lot of the issues that people would talk about with Vorkath, aside from the mechanical ones.
Dracolich and Lord of Bones are getting more common. They're gonna get dropped more, which great. Next up, Raziel.
Indeed, like I said, Raziel did not make me feel like I made a lot of money when I was there.
Yeah.
And I wonder what's the story with these changes here.
I mean, so the 2 things they added on from the previous suggestion, the 2 things they looked at in addition, they said they looked at Hermod, they looked at, what was the other one they looked at? In Croesus, and they made no changes, which the Croesus one is crazy to me. Vorkath, they said he needs more rares. They gave more rares, so actual buffs. Raziel, they looked at, and I think they just said he's not too outstanding, right? Like we said, his common drops aren't bringing in super high value. They nerfed his alkables by about 20%, left most of his other drops pretty well untouched, except for seeds. He had 2 seed drops before, both of which were a 1 in 24, give or take, to have 40 seeds of either dwarf weed for one of them, and the other one was Torstals.
And I know we were looking at this for our GIM of a source for those seeds.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because I mean, it's really hard to find a Torstal seed, which were also removed from the Zamorak drop table, or not removed, but significantly lowered. Again, going to be fine for the main game because there's enough Zamorak being done. That'll be fine. And for the GIM, the other good source of these is actually Crystal Keys with the chest in Prifddinas. Drops up 2 Torstal seeds at like a 1 in 10. Or 1 in 20 or something. But it's common enough that you can get Torstal seed if you absolutely have to from that crystal chest. They're removing Crystal Keys. They're removing a lot of the drops from there, and they're nerfing these drops pretty significantly. So one of the 2 seed drops that used to exist is again 40 seeds each, is being replaced with Elder or Eternal Magic Wood Spirits. Fine, I guess. Again, we were just talking about how we could use more of them. The other seed drop is, instead of dropping 40 to seeds, it's dropping like 5 to 8. And it's being split up into 3 drops, which are Torstal, Dwarfweed, and Fellstock. So the average chance to get Torstal, like you used to get more than 1 Torstal seed. You get like 1.6 Torstal or Dwarfweed seeds per Raziel kill. It was pretty solid. now you're getting like less than 10% of that. Like the drop change is going from, I wrote this down, 1 in 24 for 40 seeds to 172 for 6 seeds.
That's a big yikes.
That is the number of seeds dropped is dropping by, actually no, it's just dropping by 95% for Dwarfweed and Torstall. And there's some extra fell stock in the economy now, which is great. I'm not actually sure how the economy's doing on those to begin with.
I feel like we're
okay
on fell stock based on what I've been given from you guys.
Yeah. So, and maybe a lot of that is Slayer, God bless Parnassius. But really, this is kind of the thing that drove home to me. Like, we are already tight in our GIM on Dwarfweed, and that's like, we've each done different things. Like, I've done like well over 1,000. I've done like 60, 70 Reaper tasks and a lot of other like just general bossing. Parnassius has gotten his Slayer through standard Slayer up to, in the high 90s. And like we are really short on Dwarfweed. So I'm not sure where we're supposed to be getting Dwarfweed into the game from. Again, our Iron Man economy is a small subsection of this, obviously, but I do really worry about how these seeds are coming into the game, and also like how our Iron Man group is going to get them. Again, Iron Man, we signed up for a harder version of the game, but it's Dwarfweed, to some degree Torstall, and Spiritweed. I really worry about how many drops are going to be available, and like, what do you even farm for them now?
Yeah,
that has me.
It is a bit of a question, and you can see why they did the Raziel one. 50% of Torstall seeds entering the game come from Raziel, 25% of Dwarfweed seeds, and it sits second place for the highest contributor of these seeds, with Zamorak being number 1 and third being Kriara.
Well, and neither of them are going to be like, they're both getting nerfed to heck. Zamorak a little less so. But yeah, I guess we're going to Kriara now for 3 seeds at a 16 out of 128. Like, it's just grinding for these seeds is gonna suck.
That is the big concern. That is the big
guess.
Concern about Raziel, the Torstall, and Dwarfweed, because like I mentioned, I did this to log in about 1,300-ish kills. It could have taken more, and I feel like I didn't get rich off it, and like we said, the whole point of Raziel is to put in the weapons and the armor to the game.
Yes. And again, like, God Wars 2 actually drops an average of 4 seeds about 10%, a little under 10% of the time on kills. Like, there's going to be ways to farm for these. But yeah, Dwarfweed, Torstall, Spiritweed, I do kind of have concerns about removing them from so many drop tables all at once.
Bears, have you done much with Raziel?
I have like 50 kills on my group Iron Man now.
Okay.
I have one guy on the team who's at about 1,000 kills. So luckily enough, he's finished the log, and he's been able to hand out some of the dupes that he got before he finished log. So we've got a couple drops each, which is nice. But that's my next grind that I need to work on.
Alrighty then. Anything else before we move on?
No, not for these. Again, I'm for the most part, I get where they were going from, and I don't have a whole lot of concerns for these. And I'm interested to see what the release date is. They have put out in a Reddit post that they will not be coming this Monday, but they didn't give us a date. I would not expect them to sit on this for too long. Apparently, it is currently ready to ship, so it is through QA, as it were.
Yeah, just waiting to see if there's any major community things next week or two.
Yeah, we'll get maybe a week on this just to see, and then they'll see how it goes. But
all right, I did promise a what have we been doing section, so let's Bears, what have you been up to on RS?
Just the group Iron Man. I was kind of saying in one of our breaks that my group has started AOD, which is exciting. They're slow kills, but they're fun. We're working together. Been doing a lot of raids together. I'm slowly looking towards Reaper Crew. I'm only Magister, Yaka, and ED1 away now, but I still got a way to go Slayer to get to Magister. But so yeah, just keep slowly grinding the game.
Nice. Axie?
I finished up for now with archaeology and am worked through all of my backlog of rituals. So I'm at my 35,000 souls for Asiel and made about 30,000 ectoplasm.
Oh, wow.
And a handful of impure essence, and just like kind of work through a lot of that. Yeah, I'm currently moving on to getting into actually working through my stack of herblore, my tab of shame, make the group overloads.
Yeah, that's quite the tab. You posted a picture of it. Extensive. Lots of work to do on that. So, and as for me, this week has been Slayer week. I got 75 Slayer for City of Sintistan and Kuradel. Because I
did you get enough Slayer points to unlock a Slayer mask? I know Pern left a black mask for you in storage.
I might have enough points for that. I have not looked at it. I got 75 and just stopped. I think I have probably just a bit north of 400-ish points sitting, if I remember correctly.
Well, and even if we can't make the Slayer helm, the mask still works for the boosts, I suppose.
Yeah.
So.
But, Slayer's never been a fun skill, so I just kind of wanted to knock that one out for now until I get higher combat and can really ramp up the XP on that. But that's been me, and I think it's back to archaeology after the show later today, which is always a fun skill.
We made our second grace this year, I think.
Yeah, we do.
Pronunciation for the rest of the
that is good to have, and I didn't anticipate us getting a second one so quick, so good on you two for that.
Yar.
But
shout out to Pronastius for pushing through the clues.
In any case, we do have a few achievements this week as well. We have Jadjor, who got 200 million thieving on the 28th, as well as our Pugnacius with 99 constitution on the 28th. And 99 archaeology on the 27th. Then we have Atreus with 99 Slayer on the 25th and 99 Dungeoneering also on the 25th.
Continuing on the 25th, Jadjor with 200 mil mining, Omega with 200 mil fishing, Todio with 22 with 99 necromancy, and then on the 24th we got Chaotic Eric with 120 constitution, and then on the 24th as well, Chimney Lax with 99 thieving.
Also the 24th, Sio Aces with 200 million rune crafting XP, Skater Danman with 99 herblore, who's back from old school. Also 23rd, Lord Zorik with 120 invention, and on the 22nd, Magic King with 99 necromancy, and Sio Aces with 200 million thieving experience.
The tail end of double XP there. Well done, everyone.
That makes sense.
All right, Bears, you're here, and that's the reason I see the baseball picture in the pick of the week. What do we got?
Yeah, so starting next week, I believe the what is it called? 1 second. The Athletes Unlimited Softball League is starting. So this is a professional softball league for women that. Today, it was announced that Major League Baseball was contributing money into helping start and get going and become more popular. So they play their first season this year. There are only 4 teams, but they are traveling to, it looks like, 10 different cities across the U.S. and playing professional softball. So this is kind of a big deal for women's sports. Just softball is very popular up until it gets to a professional level, and there's just never really been able to keep a consistent league. So here's another shot at them going for it. I mean, I have the Women College World Series going on while we're doing this podcast. So like, it's a fun sport to watch. It's very different from baseball, as I learn every single year, but I do love it. So,
yeah, I always assumed that they were like close. I had no idea there was any like real differences between them.
No, it's so much more fast paced in softball. Like the bases are shorter, the fences are shorter. There's more home runs. It just feels faster, which is kind of fun. So yeah, it's just a good way to support women's sports here is watching this, and it looks like they partnered up with, I believe, ESPN. So a lot of the games will be
Okay, so
on
if you have ESPN,
some way with
you'll have it.
ESPN. I'm probably gonna be ESPN Plus. So yeah, that's all I got.
Sounds good. I know, and I don't know if we ever talked about your background and how you got to the sports, but your formal education is in sports journalism.
Correct, with kind of an emphasis on video games as well. It was happening right during 2019, 2020 was when I was graduating, so I kind of had to make that adjustment into esports because there was no sports going on when my last semester. So it was kind of fun to learn that side of it as well. And then it's about when I came back from RuneScape, or came back to RuneScape as well, and I've been playing for now 5 years, a little over 5 years, and it's been kind of fun to now helping this podcast and use kind of my education a little bit, because I do not work in journalism, even though I studied it. So it's my way of kind of staying with it.
Your expertise is appreciated, and I know that always was an interesting thing, and I don't know that we ever talked about it, and I hope you don't mind that I brought that up.
No, not at all.
Yeah. But that pretty much marks the end of the stuff that's prepared for this week's show. We will next week do the combat data live stream. There was just some things on my end that necessitated moving that to next week rather than this week on that. So the combat data live stream stuff will be there next week. So if there's anything you want to hear us talk about on that, ping us in the Discord, update.show/Discord. And if you want that episode delivered when it arrives, best way to do that is to subscribe by heading on over to update.show/subscribe. We're on all the major podcast listening services out there: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Pocket Casts, and more, as well as YouTube at youtube.com/RSBANDB. All right. Either of you guys have anything else before we go?
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
All right. Sounds good then. Well, Bears, thanks for being here. Always good having you on the show.
I love doing it.
And talking combat and getting into it from somebody who knows what they're doing, but it doesn't discriminate when helping newer people out, and that's always one of the things we like to showcase on this show. So thanks for that, Bears.
Yeah, anytime.
And of course, Thaxi, with all your numbers and math and the discussions that we've been doing since just before the Elder God Wars with that. So thanks for being here as well. Always good having you too.
Always good to be here.
And with that being said, we'll see you guys next week for another episode of RSBANDB Update. See you then, everyone. Take care.
Ciao.